Alright, we're at the back slide. Let's enter transparency mode. So we'll go Alt Z, and we're going into edit mode. Alright, so we'll work on this element first. I'll do Control R, add a loop cut. Place that here. Add my screencast key. There we go. Another Control R, and I'm gonna add it right there. And then another loop cut. I can't follow my reference image because that's going to be too close to this loop, so I'll place it right there. And then another one right there is fine. Then I'll come to vertex select. I'll select this vertice, Shift S, move cursor there. And then I'll Control select all this entire loop here without ignoring the top. And then I'll set my pivot point to be the 3D cursor. Scale X 0. That just straightens the loop up. And then I'll do the same thing over here. Just Shift S, cursor. And then Control click. S to scale, X 0. That just straightens it up. And then I'm going to do the same thing here. Shift S, cursor. And I'll scale X 0. And then once more on this loop. Scale X 0. And I'll just make it a little bit easier to work on the geometry here. Press 3 to go to face select, and then I'm going to select these 4 faces here. I'll press I to add an inset. Just come right about there. And then I'm going to go to edge select and select that edge there. Shift S, move the cursor there. And then I'm going to select these top faces, ignore the bottom one. I'm going to extrude in the Y. And then with my pivot point set to the 3D cursor, I can scale in the Y to 0. That'll line up those 2 faces, so I can then select that face and that bottom face. Press X and delete the face. I can press 1 to go to vertex select, and then select this vertice. Shift select this vertice. Press M to merge at last, or at first, depending on how you click them. So M at last. That's going to stitch those 2 elements together and make it one. So you have this nice little shape here. We'll straighten that out in a bit. And then what we can do is, for this element, we just need a loop cut here. I want a pretty small face, so right about there. And then we'll do another loop cut here. And then Control R, add one at the top. Press 3. We can then select these 4 faces here. And we can extrude in the Y. I'll just pull it out just a bit. And then we just do a loop cut. And we'll tighten up the edges. So one right there. One right there. And then we'll repeat that on this side. Have a loop cut here. And a loop cut there. Now you need one at the top. And then we'll also need one at the bottom here so it doesn't wash out as much. And then we'll actually have to place one right here so it evens out on this side, because you're going to get a little bit of a defined edge there. And that looks pretty good. Now the last piece on this side is the back here for my reference image. It looks like it's popped out a bit. So I can come to face select, hold Control, and it builds out this selection. I'm going to exclude the top, so like right there. And then on this side I got these 2 faces and these 3 faces. I can do a small inset, so press I. And then what you want to do is Alt S and just kind of pop it out a little bit. And then add a loop cut with Control R. Move it to this edge. And then Control R and move one to the back. And this kind of defines that geometry there. And I think that pretty much concludes all the sections on this side. So now we can just tighten up the geometry here. So the first thing we'll want to do is we can add a loop cut back here. And then add a loop cut here. That'll kind of give us a nice bevel there. And then on this side, you can see the shape is kind of washed out here. So we can do Control R, push this forward. And we have that sort of defined shape, looks a little bit better. And then this pinout is going to be kind of rectangular. So we'll add a loop cut in the middle and then a Control B to bevel. But we want to clamp it, so you'll press C. That way it can't go beyond the bounds. And then just come a little bit back. Right around there. And then we'll add one loop cut at the bottom and push it down. And it gives us this little square boxy look. And the other pin on this side is actually going to be round. At least on my reference image it is. So what we can do for that is we can select these two faces. And then grab these two faces. Press GG to edge slide them up. And then we can select these two edges, grab in the Z, bring it down. Add a loop cut in the middle. Press Control B to bevel. Push it towards the edges. And now you have this sort of shape right here. And then on this side, we'll add a loop cut here. Push it towards this edge. And a loop cut here. And then push it towards this edge. And you have that sort of defined shape there. And then just looking over a model, everything else I think looks okay. I was going to add an edge loop on this side, but it looks like it kind of tightened itself out, so that one's okay. Yeah, this looks pretty okay right now, so we'll come out of isolation mode. The last thing we really need to do is we need to join to the top railing here. An issue that we're going to run into though is if I just simply select those two pieces and press Control J, you're going to lose all those defined edges. So I'm going to undo that. We're going to have to apply this bevel, but it's going to increase the geometry a lot. So what we'll do is let's try to remove some of these additional edges real quick. So we can select using Shift Alt. I'll just select some of these edge loops here. And I'm basically just selecting edge loops that I can remove that won't disrupt the overall shape. So that's my selection currently. And you'll notice if I press X and then dissolve edges, the shape kind of stays the same. Same thing for these back edges right here. So I'll select these two, and then I'll alternate. And then for this one I can do Control R, and then I can do Alt and Shift Alt and dissolve those edges, and that more or less will keep the geometry. But the nice thing about it too is if I come into it, you can see the edges kind of line up a little bit better, so I don't have to add more geometry. So now what we're going to do is we're going to grab that railing, we'll come to front view, grab in the Z and just bring it up just a bit so there's a little bit of spacing between both objects. I'm going to come to vertex select, transparency mode, and we're basically just going to line up loop edges. And then we'll add kind of where we need them. So I'll probably speed up this footage, but basically all we're doing is the number of edge loops you have on one model or one static mesh, we need to have that many on the other static mesh. So we may be adding a loop cut to this piece or a loop cut to this piece and just lining up vertices to prepare the join. So it's pretty straightforward, but I'll kind of walk you through it, but a lot of this footage will probably be sped up because it's going to be repetitive. So all I'm doing is just Control R and moving vertices around. Alright, so we got one side done. We're just going to double check the other side lines up. It may not, because you have different edge flows, so you may have extra vertices on one side versus the other. It looks like in my case, okay. So all the vertices are good. Now before we can join, let's come back into object mode. What we're going to have to do is on the railing, I'm going to expand out my bevel. Instead of 3 segments, I'm just going to do 2. That's going to reduce the number of cuts, but it should still look all right. And then I'll hit apply. That way, when I shift select the upper receiver and press Control J to join it, it won't lose its shape when it adds the subsurf modifier to the actual the railing as well. So those edge loops are basically going to help us out. We do have some extra edge loops now though. So like on the front here, you can see there's 3 cuts. I only have 1, so I'm gonna have to go back and basically add a few more cuts. I only think that's in a few areas though. So like right here was 1. So I can just do Control R, add an edge loop there, Control R, add an edge loop here. And now we can begin the process of joining the model. Basically, we're just going to be using the merge function. There's a lot of different ways you can do this, but I prefer to stitch it together slowly. That way I don't miss anything. And because if you move the line, if you try an alignment method, where you move one mesh over on top of the other one perfectly, or do snapping, most of the time you'll be all right if you merge by distance. But in the event that you're not, then you got to go through each of those vertices one by one and figure out which ones didn't join, which can be annoying. So I'm basically just going to go through and just manually stitch them together. To do this though, I'm going to select the top one, press L, so to select link. Then I can press H, which will hide it. And then I can press 3 to go to face select. And now I'm going to hold Control. I'll build out that selection. And then I can basically just come all the way down to the other side. Hold Shift Control. Shift Control here, and then this is my last selection. So then I want to make sure that I stick there. So Shift Control. Although I guess that's not working. Might have to manually select this. Shift Control. Alright, I guess we'll just do it manually. Shift Control. I thought that would have selected them all, but I guess not. Okay. With the entire top row selected, press X, delete face. And now you're going to have this sort of selection. Looks like we have a little bit right here that we missed. Just shift select these, press X, delete faces. And that way this is basically just an open cap sort of thing. And we can press Alt H to bring back the railing. Press 1 to go into vertex select. And now we can begin the joining process, which can be a bit tedious. So I'm going to do frame selected, zoom out a bit, figure out which direction you want to go. You can go, bottom to top or top to bottom. Whatever direction you do, you probably want to be uniform about that. If you're not, you're gonna have some height issues, which you can get around with using the transform around the pivot point. There's maybe one section of the model where we may have to do that, but I'll kind of call that out. So most of this is just going to be selecting one vertex, shift selecting the other one, merge at last, and then just repeating that for each of the different vertices. If you can't see one, you might have to go to transparency mode, and then shift select, merge at last, merge at last, and then I'm basically kind of just going to be going around the model, selecting each vertex carefully, shift and then M, and then merge at last, and then just slowly stitching it into one piece. So most of this footage is going to be sped up, but I'll call out any important parts here and there. Alright, so we got a part of the model where we have another bevel that's gotten in the way. So it looks like we need to add 2 segments to this line and 2 segments to this line. That's easy enough. So we just do Control R and push this one over here. Although I probably should have done this in front view. My computer is struggling. Alright, Control R here. And then add that loop cut pretty close. And then we'll add 2 segments to this one, so Control R, and then back it over here. Okay, and then Control R, add that last one, and right there. Now with this one, I am actually going to go bottom up, which is opposite the way I have been going. So to make this work, the reason I'm doing that, by the way, is because I want to keep these this geometry, this curve, which doesn't have it on this because it's a flat surface. So I can just select any one of these vertices, do Shift S, move my cursor there, because that's going to give me my Z height, which I'm going to need later. Make sure your pivot point is 3D cursor. Then I'm going to merge bottom top, so I'll do Shift Select, merge at last. Can't see, so I'll do Alt Z, transparency, shift, merge at last. That completes that loop. But you'll notice the height's all wrong. But what I can do is I can click here and then do a control to build out that selection. And then I can just simply scale in the Z to 0. And because my pivot point's 3D cursor, it brings those vertices to where this height is, but it keeps them in their, their actual X and Y position. So I get to keep my curve, which is exactly what I want. So with that, I can just basically continue around the rest of the model and just continue emerging top down. Alright, so we're back on that similar edge. What I'm going to do is just Shift S, move my cursor there, and then I will merge to the top, so bottom up. And I'm probably going to be doing this in transparency mode so I can see. Shift select, merge. Gotta be careful with transparency mode because you can select vertices in the back. Alright, looks good, so I can hold control, build out that selection, scale, Z, 0, brings it back down. And now we pretty much have most of the stitching done. We just need to figure out this component part here. In order to stitch this out, I'm going to probably extrude these out and connect them to these back faces. But to be able to do that, I need the same number of faces, right? So from here, I have 9 vertices. And then from here, I only have 5. And that's because I have this edge loop on both sides. So what you can do is just do a Control R, add an edge loop here. So it looks like there's going to be 2. And that'll bring me to 7. And then add 2 more over here. And this will bring me to 9. We added 4 vertices to our originally 5, so now we should line up pretty good. So now what we can do is, the outside edges are already joined. Let me turn off my subsurf so it's a little bit easier to see. We can come into here, select that vert, shift select the middle vertice, press F to fill, and it'll create a line. And then we'll do that with these inside verts, F to fill, so it creates a line. And then we'll just do that with each one at the top here. And it's kind of hard to see. When we start to fill it out, it'll probably become a little bit more apparent. And then shift select this one, F to fill, get that middle vertex, F to fill. I'm going to go to edge select. And then what we can do is we'll select this edge and then this one, F to fill that. These 2 edges, then F. Those 2, then F, and then we're still just working with quads. So we still got our, if we need to, we can add supporting loops, you know, to tighten up the geometry if it doesn't work out too well. And then shift select that one, F to fill. I think we have 1 more here. This one's kind of really hard to see. So these 2 right there, F to fill. And then this inside one, F to fill there. And then usually when you're doing stuff like this, it's probably a good idea to check your face orientation. Make sure nothing is odd about it. I think it's alright though. Then we can add our subsurf back on. And then just take a look at your stitching, see if anything stands out. If there's no odd joining, it should look pretty cohesive. Doesn't look too bad. And that's going to be completing the bulk of the model. I think we still need to do the actual carrier bolt. So we'll probably model that next, but let's come out of isolation mode. Oops. Bring the rest of our model out. And then just take a look and see how the pieces kind of fit together. Usually once you're done with all the pieces, you can figure out how to merge them best. Or if you wanted to, keep them separate. If you keep them separate, you could probably see, you know, like the different cracks and sizing issues you may have. So it's usually good to join them all together at the very end. But you know, that's kind of up to you. I don't think I have any lights in the scene, but I think when I bring it into marmoset and texture, it'll probably look a lot better, but yeah, it doesn't look too bad. All right, I think we'll cut this one here, but thanks everyone for watching. We'll see you in the next one.